The Seascape Inn is a failing seafood restaurant and the focus of Season 1, Episode 6 of Kitchen Nightmares, a reality show where a celebrity chef tries to save failing restaurants from going out of business. In this video, I'm going to find out if they managed to survive after going on the show and if they're still in business today. The restaurant is located in Islip, New York. Very creative name there, guys. I wonder how they came up with it. Actually, I'm not entirely sure if the restaurant is just called Seascape or if it's called Seascape Inn because they use both in the episode, but it's definitely not an inn, so I'll just call it Seascape. The owners are Irene and her son Peter, and they explain in the beginning of the episode that their restaurant is the oldest in town. It originally opened in 1962. Maybe they were there when that first guy slipped. The owners and employees explain that back in its heyday, the restaurant was booming with business, but now it's in complete disrepair and losing money. In a cutaway, one of the owners, Peter, says, "I need $800 to $1 million to save the Seascape." I assume he misspoke there and he meant to say $800,000 to $1 million to save the restaurant. Otherwise, that is a massive difference in debt. Several reasons are given for why the restaurant isn't attracting customers. Doug, the restaurant's chef, says there's a lot of contributing factors and why, people don't come back. We've had complaints about that sewage smell. He just casually mentions that sewage smell as a contributing factor and even refers to it as if it's something that's just become a part of the restaurant. Yeah, the food's gone up a little bit in price, the wait times are a little slow, there's an axe murder that hides under the tables and occasionally kills a customer. Many contributing factors. Another employee says, "There was a stink in this place so bad and I can't even believe anybody came in at all." But one of the owners, Peter, says, maybe the reason why the restaurant has gone down in the past 2 years, because Chef Doug doesn't listen to a word I say. In response, Chef Doug brags about how long he's been cooking and all the restaurants he's worked in. He says, "I've been doing this 38 years. I went to the Culinary Institute of America. I worked in successful restaurants, world renowned. I like having the command in the kitchen. I'm gonna say my piece wherever I go to whoever I meet. Doesn't matter their status. I really don't care." That last part in particular seems to be directed at Gordon Ramsay, but maybe I'm just imagining that. Needless to say, from the outset, Gordon has his work cut out for him to save this restaurant. Gordon shows up to the restaurant, and upon seeing their admittedly junky looking signs out front, he says, "What is that pile of shit there?" Which is absolutely hilarious. He introduces himself to the owners and employees, including Doug, who is cordial and even laughs at Gordon poking fun at his chef outfit. But then in a cutaway, Doug says, "Gordon Ramsay coming here, to me it's a slap in the face. Yeah, how dare they try and fix the restaurant's problems instead of just going out of business." Gordon then sits down with the owners to try and discuss what's wrong with the restaurant, and in like 0.5 seconds, Irene starts berating her son Peter for running the restaurant poorly, and Peter complains that his mom is just berating him all the time. Gordon just makes this face and says, "God," and then presumably in a desperate bid to get out of that awkward situation, he immediately moves on to trying the food. In a cutaway, Peter says, "I was excited, little butterflies in my stomach. I'm going to be insulted by the best chef in the world." For once, someone has a realistic outlook and isn't expecting Gordon to come in and tell them they have the best food on earth. While waiting for his food, Gordon notices that the restaurant is in disrepair, and he also mentions the aforementioned sewage smell, which apparently has never been truly addressed. To no one's surprise, Gordon does not like the food. He complains that the crab cakes are falling apart and says, "I feel if I eat any more, I'll be crapping for the next 100 years. He doesn't like the salmon and crab ravioli either, and correctly identifies that at least 2 of the 3 dishes were frozen. Doug's response to Gordon's criticisms is, "Fuck him." And then Irene comes over and says, "You definitely have to try my homemade Greek cookies, and I bet you're gonna say you never tried a better one. When you eat that cookie, you lift it up and you bite." Did she just give him instructions on how to eat a cookie? In this episode, for some reason, Gordon decides to hold off on telling the chef how bad his food is until after he watches a normal dinner service. During the dinner service, several customers sent back dishes for being cold or incorrectly cooked, and Peter is on the phone in the dining room loudly arguing with someone about how he definitely didn't scam him or something, and Gordon is trying to make him go somewhere private to have the phone call so that all the customers can't hear it. Next, he goes back into the kitchen and we see Doug arguing that the dish that a customer just sent back wasn't in fact cold, and then an employee spills some tomato sauce and Gordon watches with absolute disdain as everyone decides to ignore the mess instead of cleaning it up. He then asks Peter why he doesn't get on to Doug and tell him to clean up his messes, and Peter's response is to go get a mop and clean it up himself, which makes Gordon even more unhappy. It seems pretty clear so far that Peter has trouble standing up to Doug and telling him what to do. The next day, Gordon gets to the restaurant before anyone else and does a thorough inspection of the kitchen. He finds some really disgusting filth on some of the walls and underneath cooking appliances, and he also locates the lobster ravioli he had earlier rock hard in a freezer. He also finds the pesto he ate earlier in the episode, and in the understatement of the century, he says, "It's moldy." When everyone else arrives, Gordon starts asking them if they know how dirty their kitchen is, especially since earlier in the episode, Irene had specifically mentioned that the health inspector gave them a 95 out of 100. He asks Doug, "Are you aware how filthy your kitchen is?" And Doug says confidently, "Yes, I am." Gordon shows Doug all the disgusting stuff he found and even pulls out more containers of moldy food. And to make things even better, they find a bag of dog food in the refrigerator, which it's revealed is being used to keep their fish in. They're keeping their fish in a fucking dog food bag. Doug tries to make some half-hearted excuses for the horrible state of the restaurant. He claims that one of the rotten food items from the refrigerator was his and he was going to eat it later. And in a cutaway he says, "To have another chef in my face about my kitchen? I'm pissed off, believe me." Then maybe don't have a disgusting ass kitchen. Gordon also dishes out plenty of criticism to Irene and Peter for not ever going into the kitchen to see what was going on, but Peter's reaction is, when it comes to the freshness of the food, that really falls on just the chef alone. It's his name, it's fully his fault. That's kind of like the captain of the Titanic blaming the ship for crashing into the iceberg. Then Gordon confronts Doug with the tainted Superfund nightmare pesto that he personally was served for lunch. And Doug is just like, "You're right, I didn't see it." To which Gordon responds, "You didn't see that? You got glasses on, my man." In light of the horrible conditions in the kitchen, Gordon shuts down the entire restaurant for a deep cleaning. And after the kitchen is scrubbed top to bottom, Gordon shows Doug how to cook a new special that they're going to try out in the restaurant, but Doug is still indignant at the idea of Gordon making changes, even after he just got exposed for having tons of moldy food in the kitchen and keeping fish in a dog food bag. He says in a cutaway, "I've been doing this for 38 years. I'm not happy at all. I think he needs to back off. It's come down to the point where I really don't listen anymore. Let him do what he wants." And then when everyone tries the fish that Gordon made, Doug refuses to try it and says, "I basically know what striped bass tastes like." After another scene where Doug and the, I guess, sous chef cook fish incorrectly and then argue back at Gordon when he criticizes them, Gordon sits down with the owners to talk about staff changes. He tells the owners, "I've seen all I need to see. Your head chef is lazy, dirty, and shouldn't be anywhere near a kitchen," which is pretty harsh criticism, but after everything we've seen, it's pretty hard to argue with his assessment. He continues, "He's destroying your business quicker than you can fucking realize. Couldn't even be bothered to taste what I'd cooked. You asked me to come here to work and fix your fucking business. I can't do it with those two schmucks in there. The one thing that I need you to carry out for me, I want you to go into the kitchen and ask Doug and Charles to take off. The decision's yours." And after Peter's mom, Irene, agrees with Gordon, Peter goes into the kitchen and lets them both know that they're fired. Doug takes the news surprisingly well. Based on what we've already seen, I was sure he would throw some kind of tantrum, but instead he says in a cutaway that he's humiliated and just leaves. He's humiliated about being fired, I guess, not about the moldy food and dog food bag in his kitchen. But next, Gordon takes Peter to a boxing ring to do some training to try and boost his self-confidence a little bit. And after that is the restaurant redesign part of the episode. The redesigned restaurant is revealed and everyone seems to really like it. It's definitely more fancy looking than before, and hopefully they might have even gotten rid of the smell of raw sewage. But, you know, I wouldn't hold my breath. I mean, I probably would if I was eating at that restaurant, but anyways. And next is the relaunch service part of the show. Gordon gets a new chef for the restaurant, gives them a new menu, and even has an employee named John Baptiste from his New York restaurant come in and give Peter instructions on how to carry himself a little more professionally. With the new changes in place, the relaunch service starts. But before long, shit starts hitting the fan. The restaurant gets a lot of customers at one time, and it seems like the staff is not used to having to manage a busy restaurant. Orders start taking a long time to come out, and the new chef that Gordon brought in gets frustrated with the waiters about the way they keep taking food that's not ready. In all the chaos, Peter also seems overwhelmed and confused, but after a quick pep talk from Gordon, Peter starts to take more charge and things seem to get back on track. And after the service, Gordon tells Peter that he did a great job, but that he needs to continue to improve and keep running his business. Gordon sees off Irene and Peter with a smile, and everyone seems optimistic about the future success of the business. But in the end of episode recap, the narrator explains that 5 months after the filming of the episode, Peter got a really good offer on the restaurant and sold it. So where is the restaurant today? Well, we know for sure that Peter and Irene aren't the owners of the restaurant anymore, but what about the Seascape itself? Is it still in business under new ownership? And I'm not going to lie, I really want to know what happened to Doug. I guess let's start with the business itself. My assumption was that the new owners of the restaurant would continue operating it as Seascape. After all, according to the episode, they gave Peter a really good deal on it, so you would think that they would want to capitalize on the free publicity that they were getting from Kitchen Nightmares, and keeping the name the same seems to me like the best way to do that. But that was not the case. Apparently the restaurant was going to be reopened as The Coast, but that never happened, and instead it was resold to another owner. What we do know for sure though is that the restaurant ended up in the hands of an owner that reopened it as J&R's Islip Steakhouse, and it's still in business under that name today. But what about Peter, Irene, and of course Doug? I dug really hard on this one. I think I spent more time just researching than I have on any other video so far. I looked so hard that I found a vintage set of Seascape restaurant matches from who knows how long ago that you can purchase on eBay for the low price of $10. Why would you want to buy a set of matches from the Seascape? Why wouldn't you want to buy them? Frankly, you'd be a fool not to buy them. And I even found a damn postcard for sale from back whenever the restaurant used to look like this, probably 30 or 40 years ago. For some reason, information about the Seascape was extremely scarce. This is from an earlier episode of the show, and for some reason they only used everyone's first names in the episode, even though in some other episodes they used people's full names. That meant that it was way more challenging to find information about them. So I started with trying to figure out the last names of the owners and staff. I didn't find anything on Irene, Doug, or Marilyn, but I did find this. According to this Find Us Local website, they have the owner's full name listed as Peter Matthews. But after doing several searches for that name, I still turned up nothing. I got really excited for a second when I found this guy named Peter Matthews, who kind of resembles him at first glance, but then I realized it's definitely not him, unless he had plastic surgery or something. Not only was there basically no information about any of the employees, there were also no reviews for the restaurant, besides this 4 out of 5 star review on finduslocal.com that doesn't have anything written about the experience. There is a Yelp page for the restaurant, but because it's listed as closed, you can't see any of the old reviews from it. But I was able to use the Wayback Machine to see the old reviews, and there was only ever one single review written. It's a 1-star review that says, "If Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares are any indication, this place should be avoided at all costs. I remember having lunch many moons ago and being similarly unimpressed. New owners have acquired the property and are supposedly renaming it The Coast. Here's hoping they fare better than the previous owners." So not exactly a super in-depth review, but at least he claims to have actually eaten there. I find that super weird because I feel like every restaurant has some reviews written for it somewhere. This restaurant was apparently in business for 45 years, and you're telling me that at no point during all that time did a review get put online or in print somewhere. Not to mention there was no restaurant website anywhere. I even used the Wayback Machine to make sure because it may just be offline by now. But after sifting through dozens of websites with Seascape in the address, I still found nothing. If there ever was a website for the business, there's no record of it anywhere. But finally, after much searching, I did manage to find this New York newspaper archive, and I was able to find at least a couple of articles about the restaurant. The first thing I found is an ad for the restaurant that was placed in the Islip Bulletin in 1965. I also found several help wanted ads placed in the Suffolk County News newspaper in 1997. From what I've gathered while doing all this research, it seems like the restaurant had several different owners before it ended up in the hands of Peter and Irene. I found this Facebook group where people are reminiscing about the Seascape, and one comment says, "Worked in the coat check there after I had my son. Gillespie had just sold it to the Shattini twins Rico and Vinny, 1990-ish. I found this mention of Gillespie and the Seascape in 1978, and apparently things were going very well for the Seascape under his ownership. And I also found out that that commenter was right, and that the next owner of the restaurant was Rico Shattini, based on this review of the restaurant in the Suffolk County News from 1995, written by Hank Shaw. This is the only written review that I was able to find about this restaurant. Unfortunately, it's not from the time when it was run by Peter and Irene, but at least we can see what it was like before they bought it. The article also mentions owners Linda and Rico Shattini, which backs up what that previous commenter said. The article says, "In the little hamlet of Islip, the Seascape Inn," so they did call it the inn at one point, even though I don't think it was ever actually an inn. "The Seascape Inn is an icon. In continuous operation for 33 years, the restaurant is, as their motto suggests, a place where friends gather, and a comfortable place to relax and enjoy some of the best high-end seafood around. Chef Jim Scalaro's repertoire is impressive. His menu features a host of selections from soup to nuts. The Coquille Saint Jacques was especially tasty. This melange of bay scallops, mushrooms, cheese, and cream sauce comes piping hot and served in a sea scallop shell. The only downside to the main course were the side dishes. The sauteed string beans and carrots were fine, but a promising rice pilaf with pimentos, green onions, and bacon bits turned out to be an oily mess. Stick with potatoes. I know I keep saying this, but I'm baffled that there's hardly anything about this restaurant anywhere. This was a restaurant that was featured on national TV. With some of the other restaurants I've covered from the show, there haven't been a massive amount of really informative reviews, but there are almost always at least a couple of people shitting on the restaurant after seeing it on Kitchen Nightmares. But with the Seascape, there's only one review on Yelp and one in an old newspaper. They also mentioned in the episode that the Seascape had been declared the oldest restaurant in the town of Islip. I didn't find anything about that anywhere. No articles, nothing. Which begs the question, where were they declared that? You'd think that there would be some written record of it somewhere, right? Throughout all my searching, I also saw a lot of people's reactions toward Peter and his decision to sell the business. The general consensus seemed to be disappointment, and some people accused Peter of being a coward. And while I can totally agree that it doesn't make for a very good story, after watching the episode, I honestly think that it might have been for the best. It seemed pretty obvious to me anyways that Peter didn't enjoy running the restaurant. He didn't seem to like telling people what to do, which you have to do as a boss, and it didn't seem like he enjoyed managing problems either. I was under the assumption after seeing the episode that Peter's dad had owned the restaurant before him, but after watching it again, I don't think that was the case. In the episode, he said his dad was here when the restaurant was doing well, not that he owned it. So I think his dad probably worked there at some point a long time ago, and then Peter saw that the restaurant was up for sale and bought it thinking that it would be an easy moneymaker and he could just sit back and do nothing, which obviously wasn't the case. If he had continued operating the restaurant after the episode, I honestly think it wouldn't have survived for very long anyways. And I think it would have left Peter in a lot of debt. Disappointing as it was, taking the money and cutting his losses was probably the best thing for Peter to do from a purely practical point of view. But I don't know. If there was anything the restaurant did wrong, I mean besides the bad food and sewage smell, again minor problems, it was probably the fact that they rarely advertised and had apparently no online presence whatsoever. That worked back in the 1960s, but in modern times you probably want to make more of an effort to advertise in whatever way you can. As far as Doug is concerned, like I mentioned, I couldn't find anything about him anywhere, but it's hard for me to imagine him still working in the restaurant industry after being on the show. I can't imagine a restaurant wanting to hire you after you got exposed for having a dirty kitchen with moldy food and you showed little to no remorse for it, but who knows? But that is the story of the Seascape. If anyone watching this has any additional info about the restaurant or any experience eating there during the years it was run by Peter and Irene, please leave a comment and let me know what it was like. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.